Hey guys, AP here, and today we are going to be making another tutorial video on Lightweight Java Game Library 3. So what we have right now is we have ourselves a window class, and it can take some input, but we can't really render to it. And we can't render to it without having to set some settings up first. And also I'm just going to try to finish up the window class so we don't have to mess with it later on. The only things we'll have to do after this tutorial for the window class is the icon and the cursor, but that would require image stuff, and I won't do that till I get done with the textures on rendering. So let's just start doing this. So the first thing we need to do is actually make this window that we have renderable. So we have ourselves a GLFW window, but it's not an OpenGL window. We can do that by, however, we can actually say gl.create capabilities, and that would get whatever window context is current, which we did in this line right here, and it will add the ability to render to it. So now that we actually can do that, we can do ourselves a clear color, or the background color, but it's called a clear color in OpenGL terms. So the first thing we need to do is we need to say private float, because colors go from between 0 and 1 in OpenGL. We need to say private float background and then whatever R. So we could use a vector for this one, but we don't really have vectors yet, so I'm just going to use 3 floats. When we get vectors, I might change over, but for right now, just 3 floats. We also need the other 2, which is G for green and B for blue. So background B, and there we go. I would do alpha, but alpha doesn't really work unless I do a specific one. So now we're going to have another function called set. So we're going to set background color, not set. So public void set background color, and that's going to be equal to the RGB value we put in the parameters. So float R, float G, and float B. So with that, we can say this dot, or not even this dot, we can just say background R. So background, background R is equal to R, background G is equal to G, and background B is equal to B. So after we get the set background color function, we actually want to set the background color. So we should do this in our update event, because that's when we start updating the first of the frame. So before we do the pull events, we want to actually set the clear color. So we need to do GL11, which is OpenGL version 1.1, and we need to say GL clear color, and that's equal to the RGB and the alpha, which the R is background R, the G is background G, and B is background B. The alpha for right now is just 1.0 F. We have to have an F behind this because it signifies that it's a float. And if we just do 1.0, it thinks it's a double and it's going to throw an error. So 1.0 F. And so now that we set the clear color, we actually want to clear it. So GL11.GL clear, and then whatever bit, which there's 8 different bits, but we are only going to do the color bit. So we need to say GL11.GL color buffer bit. And so that clears it. That basically clears the screen, and now we can actually start running. So if we go into our main program and we say, before we actually create the window, we could say window.set background color to the RGB. The R is going to be 1.0 F, and then the rest is just going to be 0 because we just want a red background. You can do whatever background you want. I'm just going to do red because I think that's pretty simple. And there we go. We have ourselves a red background. We can resize it. We can do stuff. So after we set the background color, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the window resizable and the ability to make it full screen. So that's not that hard to do. We could just say, we need to add a callback, because there's a callback for when you resize the window. And so just to make this things a bit more organized, I'm going to say private void create callbacks. And this is where all the callbacks are going to be. So all we could do is just say all the callbacks go into create callbacks, and we need to actually make a new one called window size callback, and that runs every time the window is resized. Oh, and then in here we just say create callbacks. There we go. And so now we go here, we can create another one. Because this is only to the window, we need to say private GLFW window size callback, and I'll just call it size callback. So what this can do is we want it to set the width and height to whatever the new width and height is of the window. So import that, and let's go into our create callbacks method and say size callback is equal to new GLFW window size callback, and then we can say we need that, and then we need to get our invoke method. Let me just get that, add unimplemented methods, and like always, the first argument is the window, and the second one is going to be the new width, and it's going to be the new height. So W H. I put J H. So now with this, semicolon, and now with this we could say width is equal to W and height is equal to H. And so now every time we resize the window, it sets it to the new width and height. And so we can actually make that in here. So GL11 is equal to GL viewport whatever we need. So we're going to say 0, 0, width, height. And so what this does is every frame it's set to the viewport, which we really don't want that. We only want it to do that when it's resized. So we need to actually create a boolean that says, we have to add the callback. GLFW.glFW set window size. Where's that? Window size callback. So window and then size callback. Alright, just a quick little adding it. And so now we need a boolean for every time we resize the window, we want it to set it equal to true. So let's put it down here. Private boolean is resized. And we want to set that equal to true if it is resized. So we can actually do that in the callback, which is called every time it's resized. So we can say is resized is equal to true. And so now that the window knows it's resized, we want to add an if statement saying if this dot, or we don't even need this dot, is resized, we want to change the viewport to the new width and height. And then we want to set is resized to false because it's now not resized. So if it's resized, change the viewport and then set it back to false. So now with this, we should be able to have correct resizement. Is that the word? I don't know what exactly the word is, but it's somewhat like that. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is we have to add full screen capabilities. So full screen is somewhat like resizing the window, except it's resizing it to the full window, which is called a monitor in GLFW. So what we can do is say private boolean full screen, or is full screen, just so is full screen. And with this we can say we actually need a getter and setter for that. Actually, we need getters and setters for all that, so let's do that. So source, getters and setters, select getters. We don't need it for time. RGB, we don't need it for frames. We do need it for height, not for input. We need it for the full screen, but we don't need it for that. And there we go. And actually, I want to do for full screen, I want to do a set as well. So boom, say generate. So now we have some getters and setters, or just one setter for the full screen. So Now with this, we can say this is full screen is equal to full screen, but since we know that it's going to be implied that you're going to either set it to the opposite one, so we need to also say is resized is equal to true. So now every time we go to full screen, it resizes it and it gets the correct width and height. But we don't actually have full screen capabilities in here yet. All we have is a boolean that says if it's full screen or not. So to actually do that, we need to go where we actually create our window. And this argument right here, the first 0, is actually if you want your window to be full screen or not. So to make it full screen, we actually need to see if full screen is enabled or not. So doing a little Java syntax, say full screen, and that since that's a boolean, we can have a question mark and a colon. Now question mark means if it's true, do whatever is after the question mark. If it's false, do whatever is after in the colon. So if it is full screen, then we want to say glfw.glfw get primary monitor, which if you look down here is basically the window or the monitor you're looking at right now. And if it's not full screen, then we just want it to be like before, which is 0. And so now with that, oh, it is full screen. Is full screen. And so now with that, we should be able to have full screen methods. So just to prove this, I don't know if it's going to show up on our window on the capture software, but I'm just going to say window.set full screen, and we're just going to say true. So hopefully this is captured. If it's not, then I'll just say if it works or not. Yeah, it works. If you can see it, good, and if you can't see it, it works. So there's no really, I'm glad I put the escape button there because now I can just exit. So what I want to do is I want to be able to say full screen while the window is running, and not just have it at the beginning. So if we we can actually fix this and say input is key down. We can say just make this one line, or not the escape key is down. And so there we go. Just one line thank you comment. Thank you whoever it was. I'll put you up on the screen right now. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, so the next thing we have to do is we have to actually do full screen. So normally games that go full screen while running uses the F11 button, so I'll just do that. Say if input dot key down, and say is full screen. So if the key is glfw in the F11 key, which is just function 11, so key F11, there we go. Then we wanted to set it to whatever it isn't, so we wanted to set it to the opposite. And there's a quick little way to do this. So instead of saying when if true, then set it to false. If false, set it to true. We can just say window.set full screen, and then we can say, since we have a getter for the window, we can say not window.is full screen. Full screen. So what this does is it basically does the opposite of what it currently is, which is what we want. So if we run our program here, actually I should say this is wherever it is set full screen is equal to false, or just don't set the full screen just yet. So if we do that and we actually press F11, which I'm doing right now, nothing happens. And that's because it only is the full screen option is only available when we create the window, which is why it worked up here, but it's not working currently down here. So what I want to do now is modify our if statement around here and say if the full screen is equal to false, or if it's now equal to true, then we want to actually make the window full screen. This is future Alex, of course from the future. So when I continue this tutorial, I actually put this if statement in the wrong one. It's not supposed to be in the update. So just follow this along, but don't put in the update. Put in the actual set full screen. That would just lead to problems in the future if you just follow my tutorials. So follow this part of it. So after we set it to resized, we want to set this stuff right here. And so with that, we should be all good. I'll prove it to you right now. Watch this. Now you can full screen or resize it, change it all, change it whatever. Go to full screen, which is F11. There we go. And then yeah, so it should all work now. Yeah. And so to actually do that, we're just going to add another if statement in here saying if is full screen, and then just add else. So if it is actually full screen, then make the window full screen. And there's a function for that called glfw.glfw set window monitor. And you have a lot of parameters here. The first thing is the window we want to set, which is window, the monitor, and so now that it is full screen, we can say glfw.glfw get or glw get primary monitor, and then the X position, and since it's full screen it really doesn't matter, it's just 0. The Y position, of course, 0. The width and height, and since we have our resize, the width and height's automatically set. And then we need the refresh rate. The refresh rate is basically what you want to do while the window is being full screen, and I just don't want anything to happen, so I'll just say 0. So now we want to do the same thing but for the opposite. So I'm basically just going to copy this and put it in here and say if resized and it's not full screen, they want to set the window monitor to just what we had it before, which is 0. And then width and height's automatically set, and that should be all good. So now, if we press play, we should have this, and if we press F11, we should go to full screen, and if we go press F11 again, we should go here. But you probably see the problem now, and it's that we can't actually close the window because it's been set to 0, which gets rid of this top little thing here, so I'm just going to press escape. So the problem is that we're setting it to 0 no matter what. For the full screen, it really doesn't matter if it's 0, but for the when we have windowed, that's going to matter. So we actually wanted to set it to the previous window position before it went full screen. And if we go to our create function, you can see that we set it equal to the middle, but we just hard code these values in. What we actually want to do is we want to have two variables that have the window position. So under here, we're going to say private int window position x, so window pos x, and same for the window position y, so window pos y. And now instead of hard coding them in, we can just say window pos x is equal to whatever this is, so it's equal to that, and then the window pos y is equal to that, but instead of that, just height. So height semicolon, and now we can just replace these things. Put u all in here and y. So now that we do that, we need to basically set the window position. And now when we go to full screen, we want to set the window position to the old window position before we go full screen. So we can actually set that by saying glfw.glfw get window position. And if we do that, we can say window position and then the window, our new, oh shoot, these are arrays. Well, now we just need to set it to array, and we need to initialize that array. And so I don't know why it's an array, that's weird, but I think it's just one, array length of 1, so now this doesn't work. We can actually just say the first and only element of the array is equal to that, and then same for here. And so now if we actually put in our new ones, which is window window position X. Then same for window position Y. Yeah, it works. Window position Y. And so with these new window position variables, we can actually set them in here. So the same way we did it before, we can say window position first and only element, and then same for both Y. So with that, we should be able to full screen our window, resize it, do all that, and it should stay the same no matter what. Okay, so we're almost finished with our window class. The next thing we got to do is, since we're working with 3D, we have to make a depth test, which basically allows vertices to be sorted correctly or shown correctly. So we can just say GL11, not GL, GL11.GL enable, and then whatever it is, which is our depth test. So GL depth test. And since we have enabled the depth test, we also have to clear that bit as well. So we just use one straight up line, which is a symbol for the OR bit. And since we're working with bits, we have to use that. So GL11 GL depth buffer bit. And so now we can actually work with 3D, which we are going to be in the next couple tutorials. And yeah. So that should be the window class all complete. And now we're going to actually finish up our input class. So right now our input class, it's looking pretty good. It has all the general input stuff that you need, your mouse position, your mouse clicking. But there's also one more feature on the mouse that we haven't implemented, which is our scrolling feature, as I am doing right now. Of course, GLFW has a callback for that. It's going to be called the GLFW scroll callback. And this is just going to be for scrolling. So mouse scroll. And we're going to have another variables. And so instead of mouse X, it's going to be scroll X. Just like if you have a touchpad, you need the scroll X. Scroll Y for normal scrolling. And yeah, so import the scroll callback. And let's initialize it. So for our scroll callback, we need to just have the callback, and it's going to have two of them, which is going to be our scroll X and scroll right. It's going to be sort of close to our cursor position, but it has a little bit of a difference, and I'll explain right now. So what this actually returns is the offset, which is the offset of it callback. And this is called mouse scroll. And it's going to return the offset, which basically means it's going to return either negative or positive numbers, or -1 or +1, or negative how many ever you scrolled, or positive how many ever you scrolled. And so for me, I really don't want that. I really just want the total amount scrolled throughout the entire lifespan of the program. So offset X, copy that for Y. So that's why I have a few variables for the scroll X. And since it's offset, we have to add it to it. So scroll X plus equals offset X, which means offset X, which basically means it subtracts if it's negative, adds if it's positive. So that's pretty good. Offset Y, and we already have these. We can actually set it free, so scroll or mouse scroll. Oh, I forgot to set the other one free, but I can do that when we add it in. So free, and then we need to get the scroll callback. So copy this, GLFW scroll callback, get mouse scroll callback. Oh, little lag right there, and then mouse scroll. So there we go. That should be most of our input class done. Oh, forgot a semicolon. And there is other instances, like specific ones that you might need it, but you could just add another input class for those specific ones. But for the general, we need to get it for the scroll X. So yeah, if you need specific input, you could just add another class and add that to your window. But these right now should work pretty good. So get scroll X and get scroll Y, and then return scroll X and scroll Y. So there we go. That should be our input. It should be our input and window class finished. Well, after we add our callback. So right here, just for organizational purposes, put it with the other inputs. So glfw dot set scroll callback for a window, and then input dot get mouse scroll callback. And there we go. Oh, and then I have to free the other callback. So size callback dot free. And that should be the entire window class and input class done for right now. Now we can actually start to render. So just to prove that this is working, we can just say in our update, every time we click, we also want the amount of scrollage. We can just replace these scroll X and then input or get scroll Y. So there we go. Now we can finally start rendering in the next tutorial. Just to prove this working, I'm going to be scrolling a little bit. It's going to be a negative Y. Move this to the side so you can see it, and then click. And ooh, I scrolled a lot. So I can scroll up, click. It's 9 now. Just to prove that the horizontal scrolling is, I'm going to use my mouse, my touchpad on my laptop. And if I click, I'm trying to, but I can't really tell. Horizontal. So, how do I do horizontal? Maybe do like diagonal. Oh shoot. Well, so, that's weird. Scroll X, scroll Y. Scroll X, scroll Y. Offset X, offset Y. Yeah, that should all work. Anyways, maybe me printing it. Alright, so I would say it works if you have a mouse pad. And so yeah, that should be everything done, and now we can start rendering in the next tutorial. If you like the tutorial, please make sure to leave a like, it really helps. And if you want to see more of these tutorials, make sure to subscribe. And you know that sneak peek video that you saw before yesterday, that's going to be coming out next week, because that's a lot of editing and a lot of voice, and it's one of my most ambitious projects, which is sad because it really isn't that ambitious. So hopefully you guys like that, but for right now, I'll see you guys later. Bye.